certainly don't. And according to the March 2015 CBO report, there's no way I'll get good enough health care to live to be 500.
Hey, now.
We're joined by Craig Gottwals. Craig, the Obamacare lawyer who makes his living trying to let employers know how all these laws are going to affect them and their benefits and their bottom lines. He comes not from politics, but from what the hell is going on. Hello, Craig.
Good morning, guys.
So the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, has issued a report on the PPACA, the Obamacare. And what have they told us?
Affordable Care Act for those of you who love the Orwellian titles.
Yes. So what have they told us?
Well, all the headlines will tell you the little bit of good news that came out of this report. First of all, it's interesting they did a report, guys. I don't know if you remember about a year ago, the CBO came out and said, y'all have butchered Obamacare so much, we're not going to do it anymore. We're not going to actually give you projections anymore. I don't know if you recall that, but we talked about it on your air. Mm-hmm. Clearly, somebody in the administration got to them and said, yeah, you are. You're not going to show us up that way. You're going to continue to score Obamacare. So they have. What's really interesting about this is they scored Obamacare in January, and then they just scored it again in March. And the headlines that have come out of this do cover the little bit of good news we got from it, and that's that $2.03 or $1.99 trillion price tag has been revised down to $1.75 trillion.
Okay, very good.
Obamacare is getting cheaper, right? And that comes with some other good news. In the process, you're going to have like 2 million fewer people in the government getting exchange handouts, and you're going to have 2 million less people lose their employer plan. That they're saying now in 2025, 7 million will lose employer coverage as opposed to 9 million. So I would think, yeah, that's pretty good news.
Sure.
And that's where most
the administration's got to be happy with both of those things.
Right.
Absolutely. And you've seen this headline, just about everywhere you look. You've seen this headline the last 2 days. And so I decided to pull the report. It's actually not that long. It's 20-some-odd pages. And the last 5 or 6 are what really deal with Obamacare. And I pulled the report, and I dug into it. And it's really quite stunning what's in that report that's not being reported. First of all, I think the most important, not to bury the lead, Joe, thing coming out of that report is the CBO itself says, buckle up, because our premium increases, the percent we're increasing, which have historically been about 4.3% the last handful of years, are going to double the next 3 years to 8.5%.
Per year?
Per year.
Lovely.
And that's a doubling. And then they go on, and then you say, well, of course, that begs the question, or that asks the question, why? And so they go on to say, well, for 2 reasons. And they have these 2 rather elegant long paragraphs that they quote as to why that's going to happen, and I've boiled it into a few words. 1, premiums are going to spike because the insurer bailouts are set to expire. And that money's got to come from somewhere, so it's going to come from you, the people, in the form of premium payments across the board. 2, and this one was really, really interesting, because the CBO acknowledged, look, the provider networks that we're using in Obamacare are so woefully inadequate and so narrow that we just know that can't last, and we know that there's all this pent-up demand in healthcare that's going to explode here in the next 3 years. Stunning.
Right.
Stunning to see the CBO saying that.
Right. So they're saying, in effect, that, and the stories were fairly well reported at one time, that you've got, 15,000 families in Florida and 1 pediatrician. And that, you can put up with that until your kid is sick. And the longer it goes, the more people are going to have a sick kid and rebel against it. So they're going to have to, those artificially narrow provider networks are going to have to grow a great deal.
Exactly. Okay. And the CBO is now finally, for the first time that I've been reviewing these, actually starting to acknowledge that.
Interesting.
Yeah. A few other nuggets in the report that I think you guys might find interesting. You could call this the Affordable Care Act. It's really the Unaffordable Care Act. A whopping 13% of people have purchased Obamacare without government handout dollars. So 87% of the people in Obamacare are getting the brunt of that paid for with government dollars. So it's really not affordable. It's just a subsidy. It's just a handout. It's just a giveaway.
Right, which, listen, some people in the audience might say health care provided by the government should absolutely be, it should be a policy. Now, they might differ on, is it the poorest 20% of us get it? Is it the Obama administration would like it to be the poorest, like 60% of us, or whatever that number is? We can have an argument about that. All I'm asking, again, with my intellectually honest hat on, I'm wearing it more than usual, is that let's recognize what this is and then talk about whether we want it or what shape it ought to be.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. The law is clearly, and you're starting to hear this more from people that used to support the law. The law is failing. Another really interesting statistic when you compare this report to the original CBO report back in 2010, originally there would be a reduction of 32 million uninsured by 2020. Again, so we're just looking 2020. The CBO had said, look, after we do all of this Obamacare stuff, we're going to go from 45 million uninsured to 32 million uninsured. It now predicts a reduction of they were going to reduce the uninsured by 32 million.
Okay.
Now they're saying they're going to reduce the uninsured by only 24 million. So every time one of these reports come out, 2, 3, 4 million fewer people will be covered by Obamacare over the long haul.
Hey, what's going to happen in June if the Supreme Court announces, the what they're doing isn't constitutional or legal?
You know, Jack, I listened to you guys talk to Tim on that last week, and
what will happen that day?
Tim did a great job. That day will be a lot of chaos, but I would imagine. I think what you're likely to have. I think you're likely to have the
looting.
Supreme Court.
I'm rooting for looting.
Looting in the streets.
Because there's some stuff I want that Judy just won't let me buy. And
emergency rooms will immediately shutter, and everybody will bleed to death.
That's a shame.
No, I strongly believe some of the briefs that were sent in that weren't covered in the oral argument, guys, there's a way for the states and the Supreme Court to split the baby here. Remember, that whole issue is whether or not states chose to set up an exchange. I believe the Supreme Court is likely to split the baby here and say, look, we're going to stay our decision for a year, and we're going to give every state, or 2 years even, and we're going to give every state the opportunity to, quote, set up their own exchange. So I think you're going to have those 35-some-odd states that didn't open an exchange be able to, on a state-by-state basis, go ahead and retroactively say, we will adopt the exchange set up by the federal government, or we will open that exchange.
That answer is not good for talk radio.
I'm sorry, but I think that's what's going to happen. They're going to punt to federalism, just like they punted last time. They're going to avoid the dramatic result.
I like the looting and the bleeding better.
Well, if it's announced the same day as gay marriage, it'll be overtaken by that. So
yeah, Craig,
you're right. It won't even be heard about then.
Craig, the Obamacare lawyer. Interesting. Thanks, Craig. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
All right, see you later.